Who likes beer? Awesome. Hi, I'm Connor. I'm one of the master's students here, and I've been known to be a little bit of an entrepreneur. So I was in the gym one day trying to start a business in the space sector, and I ended up finding this company called Space Forge, and what they do is they send a satellite up to space, and they do CPU chip manufacturing, and it ends up with a higher yield of CPU chips than doing it down here on Earth. So that got me thinking, what else could you make in space that could possibly have a higher yield? Now this was in between sets of bench press, so I didn't have much time to go into it immediately. But I went on Google Scholar, and I found a paper about brewing beer in microgravity. And as a uni student, I love beer. So that just seemed like the perfect opportunity. So when they did their experiments, they did all of the brewing in microgravity. So first, what is microgravity? Microgravity is an environment where there's about 0 to 0.01 Gs of force. So think of it as on the ISS or out in space. But unfortunately, it's quite difficult to move a brewery from down here on Earth up to the ISS, unless that was another reason that NASA could get some funding. So what can we do down here to save some money and still get the same effect of brewing beer in space? Here is a clinostat, and how it works is it rotates an object, obviously not a plant, we're brewing beer, not growing trees. You would rotate the object and keep the yeast in free fall. As we know from general relativity, if you're falling down in an elevator, it's the same as being in space. You can thank Einstein for that, but without a constant downward pull, particles remain suspended, and that leads to some unique behaviors. If any of you did want to do this at home, you could probably get the same effect of a washing machine. Make sure it's spinning quite slowly though. So why are we using microgravity? Or what are the benefits of microgravity? What it does is it prevents the yeast from settling at the bottom. I don't know if anyone here brews beer as well. That would be crazy if someone did. But when you get yeast settling at the bottom, if you imagine diffusing throughout the whole keg, it's going to take a lot longer to do that, rather than if the yeast is spread equally throughout that keg of fermenting beer. So that also enhances the nutrients access throughout the water that's being turned into beer. And yeah, you get a 33% faster fermentation rate as the yeast never sunk into a settling pile in the bottom. In the paper, they got the fermentation time down from 27 hours to just about 20 hours, which I think is quite cool. It means that over time, if this was a business, over time you end up with more beer to sell. You do get the energy costs of having to spin it, but I'm sure someone with a crank and enough beer fueling them could probably get the same effect. But now that we've brewed some space beer down on Earth, so it's not really space beer, but it has the same effect, what does it taste like? So what they found in their paper was the ATF2 gene is downregulated in microgravity. Now, if there aren't any biochemists in here, which is fair enough, that means it tastes less fruity, and it tastes less like bananas. When I was reading the paper, I never thought, when I'm drinking a Madri, wow, this tastes really banana-y, but anything to get a crisper pint sounds like a good idea to me. And that ends up in a precise, crisp lager. I think lager is probably the best kind of beer to have this towards, because with IPAs you want it to be kind of hoppy, you want it to be kind of fruity. You don't really want straight rum, well there's already good enough techniques to make that. So for my business I'm presenting to the Dragons in Dragon's Den, putting forward a space beer, a space lager, using this technique of having someone crank a clinostat to stop the yeast from settling. So I'm naming it Stella, But don't worry. There's not the second words from that beer you're thinking of, and it's also got an R at the end with a hyphen. So hopefully that breaks enough copyright laws that I'm able to market this. And hopefully it's about the same price as a normal pint. So you're going to have to get a mortgage in order to buy it. But in the future, I think this idea has a lot of room to expand. In the future, when we're all living up in space, we've got hotels on Mars, hotels on the moon, maybe we'll have Weatherspoons up in space. Imagine that, as you're going towards Saturn, you're going to explore the rings. Just after you get past Mars, you stop in for a nice stellar at the Space Spoons. You carry on your merry way. Hopefully you're not driving a spaceship, but there's always room to grow this idea. Awesome. So, thank you. Before I end, raise your hand if you would invest in this business. I'm looking for at least 10 investors. Thank you. Let's make this work.